Hi, and welcome to Introduction to Genealogy, a podcast that we do around monthly here. And I talk to you a little bit about things in genealogy that you can do, especially if you're a beginner. Well, the topic today I want to talk about is cemeteries. It was Halloween yesterday, and today is November 1st, so it's getting a little cold, but it's still not too cold to go out into the cemeteries and see what you might be able to find. Now, if you're lucky and you live in an area where your family was buried, then you might be able to find the cemetery where they're buried and then go and get some information off of that. A lot of the older stones especially had a ton of information on it. In fact, a lot of times you'd have a family burial plot where multiple people would be buried. They might have a big stone in the center with all the names and dates on them, and then you'd see where they were actually buried using a little marker on the ground. It might say mother, it might say father, but you can discern who that is. That's what I found with the older ones. Newer cemeteries, they seem to be going more towards maybe a couple, but that's about it. And it really just depends on the cemetery you go into. So what is a cemetery? I mean, everybody really knows what a cemetery is, I'm sure. That's the place where vampires come out, or Dracula, mummies, and those types of things come out of, right? Zombies, that's a big one. No, I don't think zombies come from the cemetery. Okay, but they're actually nice, calm, peaceful places, and they're not really that scary if you know what you're looking for. They seem scary because a lot of the imagery in the cemetery can be a little bit spooky, and of course they're built magnificent pillars of the people that lived. They want it to be remembered. So a lot of people have some fear of it, but there's really no reason to fear. So I want to show you a couple of things to basically get you in the mood to show you how to get to the cemetery, show you how to find things in cemeteries, and maybe find some people that you didn't know you were looking for. So I want to start by giving you an idea how to find a cemetery, because some people may not know where the cemeteries are. Now, you can always Google the cemeteries. Those are always a good place to look. But if you have a little bit of maybe a particularly small one, or one that's just not on the beaten path that you don't know about, you can always look in the USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, Geographic Names Information System, and I'll put the link in the notes. But it's basically it's right here, and I want to look for a cemetery. Okay, and where do I want to look? Well, I'm in Massachusetts, and that's where most of my family is and buried. Some of them in Rhode Island and so on, but Bristol County, that's where I'm at. So I'm going to send that query right here. Oh, so yeah, I made a mistake. It's not that. It's actually a cemetery is over here in the drop down, well, the multi-text menu here. Choose cemetery. Feature name must be for the actual name of it. So these are the cemeteries in the area. Now, some of these I'm familiar with, some of them I'm not familiar with. Some don't even look like they are. So I'm going to look for one that I do know about, but I'm going to do it the right way this time, I hope. And there's two Oak Grove cemeteries in Bristol, Mass. There's one in Fall River, where I am, and there's one in New Bedford. And this will actually give you the location, the latitude and longitude. Some of them are really off the beaten path, and you need the latitude and longitude. These ones happen to be right on the road, or at least I think they are. But it gives you information as to where they are. I can go to Oak Grove Cemetery now, and you can see information about that. Okay, the U.S. Geological Study was taken in 2002. County Bristol and latitude and longitude, same thing on the other page, really. But so that's a cemetery, and the USGS is interested in where they are mainly because it's part of their job. It's part of their job to keep track of geological things in the country, and you do want to know where the cemeteries are, because they can cause not spooky issues, but they can cause other issues if you forget about them and they get destroyed and they could seep, and that's not good. So they take care of that. Now, so the cemetery, just getting back to the definition of a cemetery real quick, they started, I mean, there's a lot of different ways of burial. I won't go into all of them, but because I haven't gotten that far back in my family tree. But it started because, from what I understand, that the Victorian age, they were burning bodies. They would take bodies and put them up and burn them. So they decided that that wasn't such a good idea, and they took them and they decided to make a big, beautiful place, a nice scrolling place, and put bodies into an area and bury them. Now, some things you might run into, for instance, some of the churches and some cemeteries, you might run into this, where you have older burials. Sometimes they might have resold the burial. Sometimes they would multi-bury people. You'll still find that today, but that's normal now. They stay basically on top of each other in a plot. So you may find that, but you also might find places where you're just not going to find that stone. You might have to ask if there's any records at a church, like for instance around the churches, the little churches, they had limited space, so they would reuse them. That can get pretty grotesque if you want to talk about scary stuff there, but we won't get into that. So those are the types of things you might run into. You're going to want to look for old cemetery books and things if you do run into that. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the USGenWeb. Now, the USGenWeb is a group of people. It's a volunteer organization, and they get together and they do genealogy. And they do that in all of the different areas of the country and maybe the world. I don't really get too far out. But there's a project, USGenWeb, the Tombstone Transcription Project. So this is one place you might be able to find. It's on USGWtombstones.org. I haven't found anything on there, or if I have, it's been not in the central location, maybe in Wisconsin or something. But they try to keep track of all the state projects of the cemeteries that are going on. So you can always register a cemetery, military cemeteries, foreign cemeteries, state projects that are going on. So this is a good place to look to see what's going on in your state, or if maybe you want to volunteer, Florida, New Mexico. Those apparently need someone to take over. So that's one resource that you can use. Now I want to show you a couple of resources here. If you have family that was in the military, for instance, and they died as a veteran, died in America, or anywhere actually, but were buried in America. This is the United States Department of Veteran Affairs Grave Locator. And this is a very useful tool. If you have a family that was buried in a military cemetery, like I do, you can type in their name, and you're going to type in their first name, and maybe you'll find somebody that you're related to. And in fact, in this case, I did. I found out that my great-great-grandfather on my mother's side, mother's side, was Chief Master Machinist Manager, I think, in U.S. Navy, World War I. And he actually had a long career, and I found out about that mainly through this site. If you go, you can see where he's buried, Section F, Site 1200. I think that was changed because I went on to find a grave after that, and somebody was nice enough to put it in there for me. So you can, we had talked about this before, but just briefly, Find a Grave is a place that you do want to come look for a cemetery. I can't spell the name right today. This is a place you do want to come and look at different people to see if you can find somebody. And you just do a search. You can do it nationwide like I just did, or you can hone in on a certain area. Oh, that was number 2 right there. Forest Lawn Memorial. Nope, that's not it. He's actually in New York. So Long Island National Cemetery, Albert John Eyre. And I actually asked someone to take a picture for me of the grave, and they did. And here it is. You can see the person named Glenn. Thank you very much. Took a picture. Actually, this is one of those things that's interesting about Find a Grave is I put that in there one day, and the next night I had a picture of it. So that's amazing turnaround time. So we talked a little bit about, I just want to go back real quick to the gravesite finder. This is a great place to look if they're buried in the United States and they're a veteran. But another thing is if they died overseas, if they were buried overseas, especially during a war, you would come to the American Battle Monuments Commission, because they're the ones that are given the commission over foreign cemeteries and maybe even the state cemeteries. I really should pay more attention in school. But we actually went and visited this, my fiance and I, out in France, where my great-granduncle is buried. So if I go in here, I'm going to find Francis Joseph and then search. Now there's two, and I happen to know that this is him because he went into the service in Connecticut, and I know that he died in 1918. In fact, I know he died April 20th, 1918, because there's a monument in Fall River named after him. So if you go in here, you'll find some information, and I actually tracked back another gentleman who died overseas in World War II, who was on the tablets of the missing in Manila. Where is it? Let's see, Miller Charles. He was Corporal Charles Miller. And I should have probably saved all this stuff beforehand, but you get the point. You can find different people here. You're going to have to look, see where they are. You can, if you find their serial number. Now, this is just a touch on some military stuff. I've done some military research, and I've gotten large amounts of information just based on name and serial number. So those are a couple of things that you do want to make sure you get, especially the date of death is good, but the serial number, the rank is always good, because then you know kind of a little bit more about them, what rank they were when they were in the service. Those are the types of things that come up later on. But this is an easy way to get started. It's free. You just go out there, you search for people that, you know, you might have found something that you know they were military, or you might have an inkling that they were, and you might find something here. So but those are graveyard. I don't really want to get too into the military. This is a graveyard special for Halloween, or just after Halloween. So thank you for watching. I'm going to be putting another one up next month if I get around to it, like I did this month, and this actually October's. So next I'm going to go into some more advanced topics, and so far I've done the free stuff, but I definitely am going to start doing some pay tools, because they're probably the best tools out there. One I'm going to do is Amazon.com. Excuse me, not Amazon, Ancestry.com. And the reason I do Ancestry.com is because Ancestry is an amazing tool, and it's almost an autopilot in a way, because they have hints that they show you, and you really just have to be careful that you pick the right hints and make sure it's the right person, and you get that all squared away, and then you're going to find people you didn't even know you knew. For instance, in this special with the people that you might find on cemetery, on inscriptions in cemeteries. So get out there while it's still warm, at least in New England, warmish, and check out your family tree. And I'll see you next time.